Hi everyone, I hope you guys are all well. It was an absolute glorious day here in the UK, south of the UK yesterday. Had the windows all wide open, it was wonderful. And today it's dark, it's gloomy, it's chucking it down with rain, and we've got a weather warning for rain this afternoon. So, yeah. It just has to be England, doesn't it? And it's horrible and gloomy wet when I do my reviews lately. But oh well, what can you do? But anyway, enough about the weather. I am here to talk about the book I have been reading for the past couple of weeks. Sorry, no, 3 weeks now. Well, nearly 3 weeks. And that is A Column of Fire by Ken Follett. Now, this is the third book in the Kindsbridge series that he's written. If you don't know, he wrote a book called Pillars of the Earth back in the late 80s, I think it was 1989, and then which is about the building of the cathedral set in the 1100s in this area called Kingsbridge. Then he wrote a sequel to that, World Without Ends, which I think was early 2000s. I think maybe about 2000. For some reason, 2007 is popping in my head. Which was really great as well. Which was set about 100 or so years later, and it followed. The cathedral is built and everything, but then a tower is built, and as well as there's issues with a bridge in the Kingsbridge area, and then finally. The third book, A Column of Fire, which is set like another, about 300 years later, which is set during the Elizabethan era. So, as you can see, Ken has done quite a range of time. He's actually currently working with editors and working with historians on a prequel to Pillars of the Earth, which hopefully will be published next year, which is based around Kingsbridge as Vikings actually establishing themselves, settling down in the Kingsbridge area. So that's like 100 years before Pillars of the Earth. Like, oh my god, I'm just so excited. But yeah, I finally got hold of paperback copy of this. I'm one of these people that if I love a series of books, whatever, I have to get them in the exact same format. So I've had to wait like forever and a day to be able to get hold of this paperback, smaller size paperback copy, so it'll fit on my bookcase next to the other two books. And I finally got hold of this, and I finished reading this, I think, probably about an hour or so ago. So I'm going to talk about A Column of Fire. Now, as I said, it's set like 300 years after the last book. So the thing with each of these books, that they are completely singular, but he does make reference to certain family links and such, and refers back to certain characters or certain events that happened in the previous books. So there's always these little Easter eggs that float through, but they are completely separate books. And this one follows a character called Ned Willard, who, in the very first chapter, he's 18 years old and he's returning home to Kingsbridge. He's been away and he hasn't seen his family for a couple of years. And he's returning back, and he expects to see Marjorie, the girl that he loves, still there, and hopefully she's still waiting for him. And she has been, but unfortunately her family want her to marry someone else, and because of that a kind of a wedge is put between them, and he finds himself actually getting a job offer from William Cecil, the man who took care of Queen Elizabeth. Basically, he was her kind of right hand man, as it were, and gets a job offer from him to become one of Elizabeth's spies. Basically, she's bringing together these group of men to be her spy network, and that leads him on this absolutely extraordinary story. Now, I have to say, I was really quite surprised by this book. At first, I was a bit annoyed with Ken. Not because the way it's written or anything or whatever. It was the fact that he suddenly propels the story to characters all over the world, and I'm like, Ken, what are you doing? what are you doing, darling? I mean, technically he had done it before in the previous, in Pillars of the Earth, because he had the stuff with Matilda going on, in France, I think it was, yeah, and in World Without End, one of the characters does leave the Kingsbridge area, so you do have, some time outside, but you've still got a Kingsbridge character to connect them. This one, you find yourself, you're at a chapter with Ned, and then suddenly you're a chapter in the Netherlands, and then you're suddenly at a chapter in France, and then one in Spain, and with all of these different characters, and they're not connected. And I was a bit like, Ken, what are you doing? I don't get this. And then Ken did the very smart thing, that he brought them slowly but surely. He brought them all together, and I'm like, oh, Ken, you're a genius. I'm so sorry. I completely apologise for thinking that you were kind of doing something crazy and I didn't like it. So yeah, sorry, Ken. I apologise for that. I bow down to your greatness. He is one of my favourite historical writers because his research into events is meticulous. The way, even things that you wouldn't expect, it's not necessarily big events. It can be little things, like there is a burning that takes place. A man is burnt at stake right in front of Kingsbridge Cathedral. The first time that has ever happened in Kingsbridge history. And the way that he talks about the burning, the scaffold. I mean, obviously you see it in like historical dramas and stuff of people being burned and everything, but the emotion that he brings into it and the way that he described it, it actually made me feel like physically sick. That when he talks about the way that he burns and everything, and the smell and all that lot, it was so powerful. And even like big events, he has researched it meticulously. You can completely 1000% trust Ken when he writes about such events, and he has done in each of the books. It's not just this particular one. There are a lot of events, historical events, that do happen in this book. I feel that they're more, in a sense, more prominent, because this book actually covers 60 years. His other books have covered a wide span as well, but I think Pillars of the Earth does about 40, and World Without End is something of about 10 or more, but this one does 60. So there are a lot of events that go on in this, and sometimes it does feel kind of like bang, 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 bang with the historical events, but it's the way that history goes. You have events that fall one right after the other. The one event that I have to say I have to applaud him for is the St. Bartholomew massacre that happened in Paris, well, throughout France really, but mainly in Paris, on St. Bartholomew's Day, and it was basically Catholics going out to find Protestants and just massacring them. And it's an event which historians to this day still argue about who started it. Was it, the heads, the country and such, politicians, that kind of thing who started it, or was it a mob that was in, lower levels of society? Was it something else? Was it a Catholic group that had been formed, an underground Catholic group that had decided just to do it? Nobody knows. So Ken has written this character called Pierre, who I bloody hate, but he's so good at writing villains, as Ken, and basically made this arc for him and used him as the epicenter of the reason why this has happened. And yeah, it was exquisitely written. That chapter just absolutely blew me away, and I had to put my book down. It was late evening when I finished that chapter, and I had to put my book down and go to bed, because even though you'd be like, usually I'd be like, oh my god, I've got to carry on, don't care how late I'm going to bed, just carry on. I had to sit, I had to put the book down and try and absorb what I had just read. And Ken, that was amazing, absolutely amazing. I think that's one of my favourite chapters of his throughout all of the Kingsbridge novels. He also, and especially in this book, he's got a lot of characters from history, and you can tell he's researched them meticulously and got them just exactly how I thought they would be. And I'm going to read you a bit of a chapter, and this is Catherine de Medici. If you've seen mine and my sister's video about Reign, she basically was the Queen of France. You'll know who I'm talking about if you've seen that video. She's basically the Queen of France. Her son was Francis, and Mary, Queen of Scots, came to marry Francis and marry Francis when they were like 15. It wasn't a very long marriage because Francis died a year or so later. But Catherine de Medici, or Caterina, as she's referred to by Ken in this book, she was a very smart lady. She had more smarts than half of her council, and but she kept, you know, certain plans to herself, and she was calculated. She knew exactly what she was doing, and this bit of this chapter completely embodies that and just makes me go, oh, Ken, I love you. So she's talking to a fictional character called Alison, who is Mary's lady-in-waiting, basically. And Katerina, you know, has summoned Alison to come see her. So, Queen Katerina had been plain when she was young, and now in her 40th year she was also fat. But she loved dressing up, and today she wore a black dress covered with enormous pearls, unflattering but extravagant. She patted the divan, and Alison sat down with the kittens between them. With the kittens between them, Alison was pleased by the sign of intimacy. Sorry, there's a really loud noise going on outside. I don't know if you guys can hear that. There's a load of roadworks going on, so I might talk a bit louder. Just had to start right as I'm doing a quote, isn't it? Alison was pleased at this sign of intimacy. She picked up a tiny black and white kitten. It licked the jewel on her ring finger, but bit her with an exploratory way. Its little teeth were sharp, but its jaw was too weak for the bite to hurt. "How is the bride to be?" Katerina asked. "Surprisingly calm," Alison said, stroking the kitten. "A little nervous, but looking forward to tomorrow." "Does she know that she'll have to lose her virginity in front of the witnesses?" "She does. She's embarrassed, but she'll bear it." Immediately the thought came into Alison's head, if Francis is capable. She suppressed it for fear of offending Katerina. But Katerina voiced the concern herself. "We don't know whether poor Francis can do it." Alison said nothing. This was dangerous territory. Katerina leant forward and spoke in a low, intense voice. "Listen to me. Whatever happens, Mary must pretend that the marriage has been consummated." Alison was deeply gratified to be having this intimate, confidential conversation with the Queen of France, but she foresaw the problems. "That may be difficult. The witnesses will not be able to see everything." Still, Alison saw that the kitten had fallen asleep in her lap. "Francis must get on top of Mary and either fuck her or pretend to fuck her." Alison was startled by Katerina's blunt words, but she realised that this subject was too important for inexact euphemisms. "We will tell Francis what to do," she said in the same practical vein. "I will, but you must talk to Mary. She trusts you." And it was true. Alison was pleased that the Queen had noticed it. She felt proud. "What am I to say to Mary?" "She must announce loudly that she has lost her virginity." "Well, what if they decide to have the doctors examine her?" "We're going to take precautions. That's why I've summoned you." Katerina took something small from her pocket. "Look at this." She handed it to Alison. It was a tiny bag, no bigger than the ball of her thumb, made of some kind of soft leather, with a narrow neck folded over and tied with a little silk thread. "What is it?" "The bladder of a swan." Alison was mystified. Katerina said, "It's empty now. Tomorrow evening I'll give it to you filled with blood. The thread will be tied tightly to prevent a leak. Mary must conceal the bladder under her nightdress. After the act, real or pretend, she must pull the thread and spill the blood on the sheets, then make sure that everybody sees it." Alison nodded. This was good. Blood on the sheets was a traditional proof of consummation. Everyone would know what it meant, and no further doubts needed to be entertained. This is how women such as Katerina exercise power, she realised with admiration. They move cleverly, but invisibly, working between the scenes, managing events, while the men imagining that they were in total control. Katerina said, "Will Mary do it?" "Yes," Alison said confidently. Mary did not lack courage, but the witnesses may see the bladder. When it's been emptied, Mary must push it up her cunt as far as it will go and leave it there until she gets a private moment to throw it away. "Well, I hope it doesn't fall out." "It won't. I know." Katerina gave a humorless smile. "Mary will not be the first girl to use this trick." "All right." Katerina took the kitten from Alison's lap, and it opened its eyes. "Have you got everything clear?" Alison stood up. "Oh yes, it's quite straightforward. It will take nerve, but Mary has plenty of that. She won't let you down." Katerina smiled. "Good. Thank you." Alison thought of something and frowned. "The blood will need to be fresh. Where will you get it?" "Oh, I don't know." Katerina tied the pink ribbon in a bow around the neck of the black and white kitten. "I'll think of something," she said. Like, that was amazing. That whole thing about how women work behind the scenes while the men think that they are in power is completely how I feel about Catherine de Medici. I just love also, and I've said this multiple times, and I said this to my sister a couple of times throughout reading this, that Ken knows how to write women and they are totally themselves. They are pure to themselves. Even bad characters, they're just absolutely amazing. I mean, there is this wonderful sequence later on in the book. I won't explain exactly what's the circumstances around it, as I don't want to spoil it, but there is a scene with two women who are connected to Ned in different ways. And basically, they could seriously hate each other. They have to live in close proximity to each other. And one approaches the other and says, "Look, here's the deal. I know this situation. I know that he can't get away from you. I know he can't get away from me. I love him. You love him. But we've got to live around each other. I want us to be friends. I don't want us to fall out. I don't want Ned to be hurt. So can we just be civil to one another?" And it's like, yes, that is exactly it. Other books would have them absolutely fighting each other and, calling each other bitches and doing the worst things to each other. But in reality, it's just a case of that this is the situation that they're in and we can live through it. The three of them still want to be within each other's lives, and in order to do that, they've got to be civil to each other. So let's be civil. And I was like, yes, thank you. My favourite character written throughout this book, throughout Column of Fire, is Sylvie. I loved Sylvie. Ken, you devastated me with what happened with her. But my God, I adored her. She's up there with Jack as my favourite character from the whole trilogy. I've adored Jack from the first book ever since I read it, and not another character has come close to how I feel about him until now with Sylvie. I adored her, absolutely adored her. But yeah, it's Ken, you killed me. But I suppose I have to kind of be thankful for that because you gave her to me at the same time. It's so weird. But yes, would I recommend this? Yes, I certainly would. As I said, there's references to previous books and such, so it is a good idea to read the previous two books, but you don't necessarily have to. But there are little Easter eggs. If you know the previous book, you know what certain things mean or certain references mean. But yeah, you don't necessarily have to. It is so well written, so well constructed. The characters are fantastic. The historical events are extraordinary. I can't wait to read the next one. I definitely read it again. This is not going anywhere from my bookshelf. I just absolutely adored it. And Ken, thank you for keeping female characters being realistic and pure to themselves and bloody amazing. I love you for it. There is an audiobook of this. I haven't had a chance to listen to it, but I'm hopefully going to listen to soon. My next Audible credit is actually due in a few days, so I think that's going to be my next download. And yeah, there's no obviously dramatisation or anything of it yet because it's only came out a couple of years ago. But if there is a drama done of it, hopefully they'll do better than World Without End that Channel 4 did, because they did absolutely amazing with Pillars of the Earth, but then World Without End, they kind of botched it, and I didn't like that. But you don't know, they might come back with Column of Fire and do it properly. But yes, if you haven't read it, I really, really strongly recommend that you do. It is an absolutely wonderful book. It's been an absolute joy to read, and yeah, it's brightened my week for sure. It's been a difficult week this week and past couple of weeks, but it's brought me absolute joy. So thank you, Ken, for that. So, have you guys read this book? I'd love to know what you think. Leave me a comment in the comments box below. Leave me a thumbs up, thumbs down, to have it please that you decide. And I'll be back to announce what book I'm going to be reading next. And FYI, my sister is coming for the weekend, so expect some videos of us soon. Alright then, bye.